The heat of Texas clings to the air as a convoy of German prisoners stops under the barbed wire. They expect shouting, fear, and hunger, but instead, a sergeant waves lazily, offers a tray, and the unimaginable happens. Hot meat, fresh bread, ice cream, and a cold Coca-Cola. For the first time in the war, they taste decency and realize the enemy they feared might be unstoppable, not with guns, but with abundance. Hi everyone, I'm Sharik, and you're watching YBR, The Sword and the Story, the place where history comes alive, one battle, one soldier, one story at a time. Make sure you join us every Saturday at midnight for tales of courage, strategy, and the moments that change the course of war. Now, let's step into the story. Captured German soldiers feared American camps until they sat down to eat. October 12, 1943, just after sunset, Camp Hearn, Texas. The heat hasn't broken yet. It clings stubbornly to the air even as the sun sinks toward the flat horizon, staining it the color of rusted steel. Dust hangs in layers above the cracked road, and the faint metallic tang of it fills the nose. A convoy of olive-drab trucks slows to a stop beside a line of barbed wire. The engines cut. Silence. And then, boots hit the ground. German boots, field gray trousers, faded tunics. Men who 6 weeks ago were crouching in Normandy's hedgerows or scrambling out of burning half-tracks in Sicily now stand blinking under alien stars. Wrists stiff from rope, habit, and months of fear. Rifles no longer slung across shoulders. Faces coated in grime, but eyes alert. The world has shifted beneath their feet, yet they do not yet see how far. A wooden sign creaks in the evening breeze. Prisoner of war camp, U.S. Army. Obergefreiter Karl Mueller steps down last. His legs shake, not from fear, but from exhaustion so deep it has become part of him. His mind reels back to Salerno, 2 days without water, artillery shaking his skull like it might crack, the humiliation of raising his hands in surrender. Sleep has been a memory since then, replaced with the cold, sharp hum of nerves, adrenaline, and shame. He expects shouting, blows, dogs snapping, hunger as a weapon. The Soviet camps he had heard whispers about seemed tame compared to what he imagined here. Instead, a sergeant waves lazily. Line up, slow. The tone is casual, bored even. Strange. Nothing like the drills or screams Mueller has known. No one yells, no fists, no rifle butts. A guard bends to help an older corporal whose bootlace is snapped. A small, mundane kindness, so foreign it feels like a trick of the mind. Mueller exchanges a glance with Lieutenant Ernst Keller, thin, sharp-eyed, a former law student from Munich. Keller says nothing. He doesn't need to. His eyes catalog, file away, measure, and weigh. Suspicion is instinct. They march through the gate. The camp spreads out farther than Mueller could have imagined. Long wooden barracks, gravel paths carefully raked, tall floodlights mounted to see without glare, wire fences that hum rather than threaten. Order, discipline, not cruelty. A corporal with an American flag patch reads names from a clipboard. Watches are returned, letters kept, belongings logged, not seized. No one smiles too broadly, but no one sneers either. The act of decency is simple here, so simple it is disarming. Mess hall, chow. The words mean nothing, but Mueller's stomach reacts instantly. Hunger gnaws, sudden, cruel, making him aware of every knot in his tense shoulders. He smells it before he sees it. Warm, rich, impossible. Bread, yeast rising sweetly, steam curling. Meat, brown, tender, swimming in gravy. Potatoes, soft and white, a tiny perfection. And then, a bottle. Glass, dark liquid inside. Coca-Cola. He freezes. He has seen the ads, heard stories of American decadence before the war. Sugar, bubbles, fat civilians, unearned comfort. The bottle seems absurd in his hand. A smirk from an American cook. Go on, it's good. They are ushered forward, hundreds of men, trays clattering, voices echoing, boots scraping concrete. The line moves slowly. Mueller sees a private whisper under his breath. Is this a trick? No one answers. Not yet. Trays are filled. Meat, potatoes, bread, the cold bottle at his elbow. The smells, the warmth, the sheer normalcy of it presses against him. He sits. Keller sits beside him. And then, for a few seconds, no one eats. The room hums with American chatter. Forks scrape, laughter from nearby tables. A sound of human life moving forward. Safe, steady, routine. Keller breaks his bread. The sound is clean, precise, echoing in Mueller's skull. Mueller's resolve falters. He shovels meat onto his fork, tastes it, realizes it is real, hot, tender, like nothing he has eaten in months. Hunger fades into disbelief. Around them, the dam breaks. Men eat with a mixture of abandon and caution, some closing eyes, tasting something familiar from another life. One man begins to cry quietly, shoulders shaking, tasting comfort and danger intertwined. Another laughs short and disbelieving, a bark of human reaction after weeks of tension. "This? For prisoners?" mutters someone in German. "This?" Keller drinks from the bottle, studies the room, and now his gaze changes. This isn't mercy, not exactly. This is confidence, precision, preparedness, power measured not in gunfire, but in bread, meat, and well-organized routine. Outside, the guards smoke cigarettes, laugh. One offers a cigarette to a German corporal through the open door. The corporal hesitates, then accepts. Mueller watches, stomach tightening, not from hunger, but understanding. Something larger is at work here. The war he thought he knew, the rules he memorized, the stories of inevitable victory are incomplete, flawed. For the first time, a quiet, dangerous thought creeps in. What if everything he had been told was a lie? What if the propaganda, the certainty of German superiority, the stories of inevitable victory were wrong? The realization isn't yet fully formed, but it hovers, a shadow behind the clatter of trays, the laughter, the smell of warm bread, and the dark fizz of Coke. It will not leave. Mueller eats, slowly at first, then faster, letting sensation replace fear. He tastes the absurdity of abundance. Around them, men adjust, officers note it, privates marvel. The American guards watch with quiet patience. Humanity, structured, organized, and confident, exerts itself in small ways. The battlefield is far away. Here, decency is strategic. The war is more than bullets and tanks. It is logistics, it is supply, it is routine executed flawlessly. And as he lifts another forkful of meat, Mueller knows something subtle has shifted. The war is bigger than he thought. He is smaller than he thought. The heat hasn't broken, but the air feels charged now with possibility. And the thought, silent and dangerous, continues to pulse in the back of his mind. What kind of force can feed its enemies like this? And what does it mean for the war to come? The room hums with quiet astonishment as trays empty and the murmurs rise and fall. Men sit back, breathing unevenly, hands sticky from gravy and sweat, faces flushed from hunger and heat. Some stare at their plates as if expecting it all to vanish, while others glance at their neighbors, seeking confirmation that they are not imagining this. Colonel Franz Wietz, senior officer of the group, leans back against a rough wooden bench. His tunic is rumpled, belt askew, medals dulled by dust and exhaustion. He watches the younger soldiers eat, observing their reactions with a careful eye. They had been trained to fear starvation, humiliation, and abuse. Yet here, food is abundant, warm, and offered without pretense. He frowns slightly, lips pressed, mind racing. This is not mercy. This is calculated, precise, and powerful. Keller sits beside Mueller, quiet for the first few moments, studying each man's expression. The bread in his hands seems to anchor him to reality. He glances at the American cooks moving efficiently behind the counters, the mess hall officers taking notes, and the trays sliding smoothly along lines of soldiers. He counts the soldiers, the portions, the organization. Even here, among their captors, the Germans cannot ignore the logistics at play. Hundreds of men fed in a matter of minutes, with trays, not scraps. Hot meat, fresh bread, clean potatoes. The efficiency is staggering. A private lets out a laugh that cracks into a short cough, then leans forward to eat again. His hands shake. He looks down at the bread and gravy, then up at the ceiling beams, as if trying to reconcile this with all he has been told about America, about its decadence, about its supposed weakness on the battlefield. The contradictions press on him. Hunger has always been cruel, in Germany's army and everywhere else he's seen. This is deliberate abundance. Mueller swallows and leans back, closing his eyes. The taste of meat, potatoes, bread, and the fizzy sweetness of Coca-Cola presses a memory into him. A childhood picnic with his family before the world unraveled, before the war made everything harsh and violent. He has not tasted comfort for years, and now it sits in his hands. The thought gnaws at him. What other comforts do these people enjoy? How organized are they? How prepared? Outside, through the mess hall windows, the evening sky deepens. Guards smoke cigarettes, talking casually, their voices carrying across the yard. A corporal tosses a cigarette to one of the younger POWs leaning against the fence. He hesitates, then takes it. It is a simple gesture, yet the weight of it presses into Muller's mind. Decency, structure, confidence. America doesn't just feed its prisoners, they project power through normalcy. They create order even for their enemies. Colonel Wietz rises slowly, motioning for a few officers to gather around a small table at the corner. Maps, notes, and reports had been kept hidden during the initial arrival. Now he spreads them quietly, eyes scanning. He sees the rations, the timing, the organization of kitchens, deliveries, and supplies. The infrastructure here dwarfs anything he had experienced on the front lines. Ships unloading in ports, convoys delivering tons of supplies daily, factories producing at a speed impossible to imagine. This is not weakness. This is industrial might distilled into action. Keller watches him, sharp eyes following the movements, noting the realizations settling in their minds. The war had been taught as a matter of heroism, of daring raids, of courage under fire. Yet here, the real story is clear. Preparation, production, and logistics win wars more than bravery alone. The men had been told they were facing a peer enemy, but this is a force beyond simple comparison. A young private glances at Keller, whispering in awe. Do they run out of anything? Keller shakes his head. He cannot answer. He cannot. The patterns are already embedding themselves in his mind. The kitchens, the commissary, the clean bunks, the distribution of supplies. Each act of normalcy, each meticulous detail is a weapon. It strikes not with bullets, but with inevitability. Muller's hands still tremble slightly as he folds the empty tray. For a moment he touches the metal, cold beneath his fingers, and it feels absurdly permanent. There is no rush, no humiliation, no threat. He glances around the hall. Soldiers laugh, men wipe gravy from their mouths, one quietly weeps. He sees Keller's eyes, steady and analytical. They both understand this moment, this simple act of feeding hundreds efficiently and kindly is a force multiplier, a message the enemy cannot ignore. Outside, the night hums quietly, a breeze rustles the trees. The barbed wire shimmers faintly under the floodlights. The guards chat casually, occasionally smiling or nodding to POWs passing by. There is no cruelty, there is control, there is confidence. And within the walls of this camp, the Germans feel it, consciously or not. Their assumptions are crumbling. Muller leans back against the bench, staring at the ceiling beams. He recalls the stories from the front, Sicilian hedgerows, the bloodied sands of Normandy, the chaos of Salerno. Here, in a few hours, a meal, a tray, a bottle of Coke, and an orderly barracks have made the world feel both smaller and larger at the same time. Smaller because survival seems easier than imagined. Larger because the industrial and organizational power behind it is immense, terrifying even. Keller quietly finishes his drink, places the bottle on the tray, and studies the mess hall again. His gaze passes over each POW, the laughter, the disbelief, the subtle trembling hands. Each face tells a story of shock, of internal recalibration. He realizes that this is not merely feeding enemies, it is teaching them a lesson, embedding respect, and forcing them to measure the magnitude of what they are up against. By the time the men are dismissed back to their barracks, the camp feels less like a cage and more like a revelation. Every step they take, every glance at orderly fences, clean paths, and the well-fed Americans passing by drive home the point. The enemy is not just well supplied, it is unstoppable if left unchecked. Muller carries his tray back, now empty, but the weight of understanding heavier than any ration. He glances at Keller. No words pass between them, none are needed. They are prisoners, yes, but also witnesses. Witnesses to a strategy that transcends bullets, guns, and battlefields. The calculated, relentless, human-scale power of a nation capable of feeding its enemies like kings. And in that moment, under the flat, rust-colored sky, dust still hanging low over the road, and the silent hum of floodlights, a quiet realization settles in Muller's chest. The war is not fought in the trenches. It is fought in kitchens, barracks, and factories. It is fought in the invisible infrastructure of confidence, abundance, and preparation. He will carry that understanding with him, silently, dangerously. It will reshape how he measures strength, victory, and defeat. And it will haunt him, like the echo of laughter, the smell of bread, and the unexpected taste of a cold Coca-Cola in a prisoner of war camp. Because for the first time since the war began, he understands something chilling. The enemy is not just surviving the war,
They are winning it, quietly, every single day.
Morning in Texas arrives not with the harsh cries of bugles or shouted commands, but with a quiet golden light that creeps slowly across the wooden floors of the barracks. The sun, still low, stains the horizon pale gold, turning dust motes into tiny floating jewels that drift lazily in the air. For a brief moment, Karl Mueller doesn't know where he is. The air smells faintly of grass and dust, without smoke, cordite, or the metallic tang of blood. Then the memory strikes him like a fist. America. He is a prisoner. He sits up slowly, the thin mattress beneath him yielding slightly but clean, covered in sheets. Actual sheets, not the straw and lice-ridden blankets scavenged from some dead comrade in the field. Around him, other German soldiers wake with the same quiet confusion, rubbing their eyes, scanning their surroundings as if expecting the illusion to collapse. But it doesn't. Everything is orderly, calm, functional. Outside, a bell rings, not sharp, not urgent, almost polite in its tone. A voice carries over the yard, slightly distorted by distance. Roll call in 10 minutes. Mueller swings his legs off the bunk and puts on his boots, which fit without complaint. His uniform, brushed the night before, sits properly on his body. Nothing has been confiscated. Nothing is torn. He steps into the yard, where movement already stirs among the other prisoners. The camp is calm. Guards are stationed at intervals, rifles slung loosely, fingers nowhere near triggers. Some lean against posts, one whistles softly, a few walk casually across the gravel paths. Groups of prisoners speak freely in German. No one interrupts, no one shouts, no one corrects. Roll call proceeds efficiently. Names read, numbers checked. Mistakes are tolerated. A man who coughs too long is directed quietly to the infirmary. The word itself brings strange comfort. It promises care, not punishment, not fear. After roll call, the prisoners are dismissed. Breakfast in 15, a calm voice announces. 15 minutes later, Mueller enters the mess hall again. The smell hits first. Coffee, strong and black. Real coffee, not the acorn substitute forced upon them in Germany after 1941. Eggs sizzle. Bacon crackles faintly in the background. Hunger gnaws at him, sharp and immediate. The Germans line up, more confidently this time, though still wary. Hunger overcomes suspicion. Mueller's tray fills with scrambled eggs, bacon, oatmeal, and a slice of toast with butter. Real butter. At the end of the line, an American private pours coffee into a tin cup, glancing at Mueller with a grin. "Morning," he says casually. Mueller nods, unsure of what to reply. The first bite is surreal. Warm, soft eggs, crisp bacon, butter melting over toast, coffee black and bitter, grounding him in the moment. He takes another mouthful, feeling disbelief melt into cautious awe. Around him, the other prisoners react similarly, hesitant first, then with growing abandon. The quiet room hums with human sounds, forks scraping against tray, subdued conversation, nervous laughter. Day after day, the routine continues. Breakfast, roll call, and voluntary work details, cleaning, kitchen duty, repairing fences. They are paid wages, credited to accounts they can spend in the camp commissary. The concept feels impossible at first. Prisoners working for pay, given agency and trusting them not to steal or cheat. Mueller visits the commissary once. The shelves are stocked. Soap, razor blades, toothpaste, chocolate, cigarettes, even magazines like Life and Time. The images show a country untouched by war. Shining cars, smiling women, baseball games in full sun. One prisoner laughs aloud. "Propaganda," he says. "They want us soft." But the days continue. Lunch is substantial. Soup, meat, vegetables. Dinner rotates. Stews, pasta, occasionally chicken. On Sundays, dessert. Ice cream. Vanilla or chocolate. Cold, sweet ice cream in the middle of a war. Men argue good-naturedly over flavors, giggling and shaking their heads at the absurdity of it all. Mueller watches Keller closely. The young officer is no longer sharp and defiant outwardly. His edge has turned inward, studying, questioning. He asks subtle questions. How often do trucks arrive? How many meals are prepared daily? How consistent are deliveries? One afternoon, while sweeping the yard, Keller speaks quietly. "Do you notice?" Mueller shakes his head. "The guards, they aren't counting food. No one is watching the kitchens closely." Mueller frowns. "So?" Keller shrugs. "It means there is no shortage." The statement hangs heavy in the air. Not just food, but the realization of abundance, reliability, and planning.
That night, Keller borrows a copy of Life magazine from the camp library. He studies photographs long after lights out. Shipyards churning out hulls taller than buildings, women welding aircraft, factory floors humming with the relentless heartbeat of production. The scale is incomprehensible. Keller pinches the bridge of his nose. He writes notes in German, numbering ships, planes, and cargo trains. Each tally pushes his mind further. This is not wartime improvisation. This is industrial certainty turned into military power. Meanwhile, the prisoner's behavior begins to shift. Laughter rings through the mess hall, but now it carries a thread of disbelief. Soldiers who once mocked one another for weakness now whisper, glance, and calculate silently. Conversations drift from trivial grievances to hushed debates about supply lines, rations, and the logistics they see around them. "This is impossible," a Feldwebel mutters while examining the trays he carries to the kitchen. "They cannot have enough for themselves, let alone us." "They can," Mueller whispers back, voice tight with disbelief. "Look at everything. The food, the water, the commissary. Nothing runs out, ever." The commissary becomes a kind of revelation. Each trip opens their eyes wider. Soap, razors, chocolates, cigarettes, magazines. They can buy what they want, what they need. It is not a privilege, it is a right. The notion that a prisoner might be denied sustenance, comfort, or dignity is foreign here. Even small comforts like a cold bottle of Coca-Cola or ice cream on Sunday strike the men as evidence of a system both capable and confident. Keller notices something else. The guards themselves, they do not hover, they do not mistrust, they do not micromanage. They stand at posts, watch, and intervene only when necessary. The men are trusted, treated humanely, and expected to perform simple responsibilities. Yet the absence of constant oversight does not lead to chaos. It produces order through confidence. This observation lodges in Keller's mind. Trust is power. Precision is weaponized. One afternoon, while sweeping gravel paths, Keller speaks quietly to Mueller. "You see it, don't you? They don't count every potato. They don't ration soap like they're afraid it will vanish. They know there is enough, always enough." Mueller nods slowly, his gaze distant. "If they can do this for us," he stops. Words fail him. "Then what about their soldiers?" Later, Keller borrows a copy of Life magazine from the camp library. He studies photographs for hours. Women weld ship hulls taller than buildings. Airplanes roll off assembly lines faster than any German factory could produce in a month. Entire factories seem to hum with the relentless heartbeat of production. The scale is incomprehensible. Keller closes the magazine with a sharp exhale. The scale of American industrial might is beyond what he has ever imagined. This is a machine, a war machine that feeds itself and feeds its enemies simultaneously, building, supplying, and moving with terrifying efficiency. The realization begins to fracture their morale. Some soldiers argue. "It's a show," one insists. "They want us soft so we'll talk when we're sent home." Another whispers, "Or starve us later once they tire of us." Yet nothing of the sort happens. Every meal is as promised. Every allowance, every ration, every opportunity to work or spend pay is delivered without fail. The system is steady, reliable, and unstoppable in its quiet way. Letters from Germany continue to arrive. They speak of deprivation, fear, rationing, and uncertainty. Mueller writes back carefully, omitting details of butter, ice cream, and coffee. Keller writes everything, providing glimpses of abundance, order, and unexpected decency. The contrast between the life inside the camp and life back home is stark, almost absurd. Weeks later, Keller is summoned to the camp office. Captain Robert Henderson waits, calm, impeccably dressed. "You were a lawyer?" he asks. Keller nods. "You understand the Geneva Convention?" Henderson slides a document across the desk. "Detailed camp rations, medical provisions, and work pay rates. We follow it by the book," he says. Keller scans the pages, jaw tightening. "More strictly than we did," he mutters. Henderson says nothing. Outside, Keller stops Mueller. "This is not charity," he says. "This is proof." "Proof of what?" Mueller asks uneasily. Keller's eyes sweep the camp. Rows of orderly barracks, men walking freely, guards relaxed but watchful. "Proof that they can afford this," he says softly. And with that, the full weight of understanding presses down on them. If the Americans can feed prisoners, maintain clean and efficient camps, and still fight on multiple fronts, what must their soldiers receive at the front? That night, Mueller lies awake, staring at the ceiling. Ice cream, clean sheets, chocolate, coffee. These are not small comforts. They are evidence of a system, a machine, a nation capable of feeding the world, even while waging a war on multiple continents. And if the enemy can feed their prisoners like this, what is the cost for those standing in uniform at the front? The question sharpens, unavoidable. How do you fight a force that can supply itself relentlessly, endlessly, perfectly, while...
December 3rd, 1943. Late afternoon. The sun hangs low over Camp Hearn, casting long shadows across the frost-tinged barracks. A cold front has swept down from the north, biting into the Texas plains with an unfamiliar sharpness. Every breath hangs in the air like smoke, coiling upward in delicate, fleeting clouds. The prisoners pull their coats tighter around themselves, the thin layers of cloth doing little to stop the chill. Somewhere, far beyond the barbed wire fences, a train horn sounds, long, slow, unhurried, echoing over the flat expanse of the camp. Carl Mueller watches the train as it rolls past. Freight cars click rhythmically along the rails, an endless parade of crates, flatbeds, and tankers. Painted markings flash past: U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, private companies, coal, steel, fuel. Supplies stacked high, bending the rails as if defying gravity. He has watched these trains for weeks, counting them at first, trying to make sense of the constant flow. But soon he stopped. There were too many. No rhythm, no pause, just a ceaseless movement of material. A voice beside him interrupts his reverie. It is older, steadier, measured. "Do you know what that means?" Mueller turns. Colonel Franz Wietz stands tall, hands clasped behind his back. The Africa Corps veteran was captured in Tunisia after the collapse of German lines. His eyes never leave the passing train, his face set in a calm, unreadable mask. "No, Herr Oberst," Mueller replies, uncertainty thick in his voice. Wietz's gaze remains fixed on the freight cars. "It means this country is not at war the way we are," he says slowly. "It is operating." The word lands like a hammer. Operating. Not scrambling, not improvising, not struggling. It is functioning. Every crate, every car, every engine moving with purpose. The implication presses on Mueller's mind like ice. This is not chaos. This is efficiency made real. That evening, Wietz is formally invited to meet the camp commandant, a courtesy reserved for senior officers. When he returns to the barracks, the men sense immediately that something has shifted. Wietz gathers them together, the room unusually quiet. They sit on bunks, benches, even crates. The low light of oil lamps casts long shadows, accentuating the lines on tired faces. "I asked questions today," Wietz begins, voice calm but carrying weight. "Not about troop movements, not about strategy." He pauses, letting the anticipation build. "I asked about food." A ripple of murmurs passes through the men. Some chuckle nervously, some scoff, others sit rigid, awaiting revelation. Wietz continues, voice low but clear. "The Americans are feeding us exactly the same base rations as their own rear-line troops. Meat, dairy, sugar. Not surplus, standard issue." "Impossible," mutters one of the younger prisoners. Wietz nods. "That is exactly what I thought." He gestures toward the frost-dusted window where the last light of day glints off the train rails. "They import some food. They export more. Their farms produce so much that restriction is unnecessary." Silence falls. The weight of the observation presses down on them all. Food is no longer just sustenance. It is morale, endurance, and a weapon of war. Wietz straightens his posture, eyes scanning the room, and the truth begins to seep in. "You are gaining weight," he says quietly. A nervous laugh breaks out, but dies quickly. "An army that can feed its prisoners this way," Wietz concludes, "will never run out of soldiers." Days later, Mueller is assigned to a work detail unloading supplies. Crates are marked not only for German POW camps, but also for Italian and Japanese internment facilities, and even for civilian relief shipments. One crate splits open accidentally, revealing powdered milk, canned meat, flour, enough to feed an entire village. The American sergeant overseeing the detail barely reacts. "Careful with that," he says mildly. "Paperwork's a pain." Not scarcity, not rationing, paperwork. Mueller's stomach twists as the contrast between his memories of home and the abundance surrounding him presses in. That night, he dreams of his family, his mother cutting bread so thin it crumbles, his sister handing him a watery soup, bombs roaring overhead, walls shaking from distant explosions. And now, juxtaposed to that memory, are trays of steaming meat, soft bread, chocolate bars, ice cream. Not luxuries, not exceptions, but a deliberate, sustained supply chain that dwarfs anything Germany can provide. The contrast gnaws at him. Christmas arrives. Camp Hearn is decorated, not lavishly, but with enough pine boughs and strings of lights to mark the season. The mess hall serves turkey, potatoes, cranberry sauce, and pie.
An American chaplain speaks briefly, invoking peace and decency. Soldiers eat, laugh softly, and some even sing quietly. Afterwards, Private James O'Connor, a guard, sits among the prisoners, passing cigarettes. "You fellas get Christmas back home?" he asks casually. "Not like this," Muller says quietly. O'Connor shrugs. "My ma would kill me if I didn't eat like this." That sentence lodges in Muller's mind. It's not the food alone, it's the assumption of normalcy and abundance. It is enforced, expected, and unquestioned. Food is not rationed for fear of scarcity, it is distributed because the system can afford it. Each turkey, each slice of pie, each tin of coffee is a tangible proof of capacity, power, and preparation. Weeks later, Keller shows Mueller a letter from his wife. She writes of cold rooms, queues, trading jewelry for a piece of meat, rumors of further cuts. Keller holds the letter carefully. "They are losing weight," he says, softly. Neither man laughs. The room is quiet, heavy with understanding. The truth settles in. This war will not be decided by bravery alone, by clever maneuvers, or even by weapons. It will be decided by who can keep the machine fed, day after day, year after year, without faltering. Mueller steps outside into the cold evening. Another train passes in a long, unbroken line. He does not count it. He does not need to. The realization is complete. The war is no longer merely a contest of bravery, weapons, or maneuver. It is a battle of sustainment, endurance, and relentless capability. And in that dimension, Germany is already behind. Mueller exhales, the cold air biting at his lungs. He steps back into the barracks, silent now, the weight of inevitability pressing down on him. Across the camp, the lights of the mess hall glow warmly, guards smoke quietly at posts, and prisoners eat again, unaware that the lesson extends far beyond their own bellies. For the first time, Mueller does not think of battle tactics or heroic charges or clever maneuvers. He thinks of machines, supply chains, and the quiet certainty of an enemy who can feed its soldiers and its enemies without pause. That thought is heavier than any rifle, stronger than any artillery shell. It is a truth no strategy can overcome. An army that never goes hungry is almost impossible to defeat. He leans against the cold wooden wall, listening to the faint clatter of trays in the mess hall, the distant hum of freight cars beyond the fence. The thought crystallizes fully now, sharp and unavoidable. Victory in this war may not be decided by courage, skill, or valor alone. It will be decided by the machine that can keep feeding itself, day after day, year after year. And that machine, Mueller realizes with chilling clarity, is America.
February 19th, 1944. Early morning. Camp Hearn. Rain taps rhythmically against the barrack roofs, a steady, unrelenting drumbeat. The yard is turned to mud, shallow puddles reflecting the muted gray light of a Texas dawn. Every step sinks slightly, splashing dirty water onto worn boots. The air is crisp, freshly washed by the storm, carrying the smell of wet wood and grass, a scent strangely calming after weeks of smoke, dust, and war. Carl Mueller stands near the perimeter fence, hands tucked deep into his coat pockets, watching steam curl from the vents of the mess hall. The smell of breakfast, hot, rich, real, rises with the vapor, mingling with the damp air. Inside the camp office, Colonel Franz Wietz sits across from Captain Robert Henderson. The desk between them is bare of paperwork this time. Only 2 cups of coffee sit on the polished wood, steam rising in soft spirals. Henderson slides a cup across the table. "Cream?" he asks. Wietz hesitates, then nods. He watches the swirl of white dissolve into the dark liquid and lets the warmth seep into his hands. For a moment it is quiet. Nothing else exists but the small, deliberate act of stirring cream into coffee. Wietz begins speaking slowly, his voice carrying the weight of hard experience. "In North Africa," he says, "we lost more trucks to breakdown than we did to enemy fire." He sips from the cup, eyes narrowing, recalling the endless deserts, the punishing heat, the breakdowns that crippled supply lines more than any battle ever could. "Our engines ran dry, our men ran thin. We fought knowing we could not replace what we lost." He looks up at Henderson, who listens with calm attention. "You fight battles assuming you can," Wietz continues. "That is the difference. Not courage, not intelligence, assumption. The ability to rely on your machine, your supply, your systems." He taps the desk lightly for emphasis. Outside, Mueller joins Lieutenant Keller beneath the overhang near the barracks. The rain has slowed to a mist, leaving the yard slick with mud. A convoy of American trucks rumbles through the gate, laden with crates, barrels, and sacks, glinting in the weak morning light. Keller exhales slowly, eyes tracking the movement of tires and cargo. "Did you ever hear the phrase Wirtschaftskrieg?" he asks quietly. "Economic war," Mueller replies. Keller nods. "Yes, we talked about it in staff briefings, abstractly, as theory." He gestures toward the trucks moving steadily across the yard. "This," he says, voice low, "is it in physical form. Every crate, every barrel, every shipment. It is a demonstration, not just of capability, but of the war itself." The implications settle over Mueller, a weight pressing against his chest. He watches as the convoy disappears down the muddy road, disappearing into the distance. He notices the discipline of the drivers, the efficiency of the loading crews, the calm, unhurried movements of the men. Everything is planned, expected, sustained. No improvisation, no panic, no shortage. Later that day, a fresh group of prisoners arrives. Mud-caked boots, hollow faces, Eastern Front veterans hardened by years of brutal combat. Their eyes dart nervously as they are shepherded through medical checks, delousing, and the issuance of clean uniforms. Mueller watches them enter the mess hall. The scene unfolds as he remembers it. The same pause, the same disbelief, the same almost reverent hesitation before a hot meal. One man stares at his tray as if it might explode, a surreal contrast to the freeze-dried rations he endured for months on the front. Another whispers, "Is this a joke?" But no one answers. The camp does not need to explain. The lessons have been internalized. Within days, the questions begin to spread. Is this always the food? Yes. Every day? Yes. Even now? Especially now, Mueller thinks. The answer hangs in the air, unspoken yet universally understood. Word travels through the barracks like electric current, not just about meals, but about the power and organization behind them. The factories, farms, paychecks, letters, and idle complaints of American soldiers all paint the same picture. This is a country capable of sustaining itself and its armies, and it will not falter. Mueller realizes another subtle shift has taken place. The guards, the fences, the watchtowers, these are not here to keep the Germans in. They never really were. The barriers exist to keep the war out. A protective measure, not a punitive one. A demonstration of confidence, not fear. That evening, Mueller sits once again with Private James O'Connor near the mess hall overhang. Rain-soaked mud clings to the soles of their boots. "Why do you think we treat you like this?" O'Connor asks suddenly. Mueller considers carefully. "Because you can afford to," he says finally. O'Connor nods slowly. "And because if we didn't, we'd be no better than the people we're fighting." The words strike deeper than any battle report, deeper than any analysis of artillery or tank strength. Mueller thinks of the countless soldiers he has watched go hungry, of the endless improvisation of his own army, of the reliance on scraps, substitute rations, and luck. Preparation, abundance, and foresight are weapons themselves. March arrives. Rumors reach the camp. Allied landings in Italy, bombings of German cities, whispers of a larger invasion in the West. The prisoners listen not with hope, but with the analytical caution of soldiers who have seen plans fail before. Wietz calls together the officers for a final meeting. "The war will end," he says, pausing, letting the words sink, "sooner than many think." Confusion flickers across a few faces. He continues, "When it does, remember this camp. You will be asked how Germany lost. You may be tempted to blame traitors, or luck, or overwhelming force." He shakes his head, voice firm. "Tell them the truth. We fought an enemy who could feed prisoners better than we could feed our own children." Silence fills the room. The weight of reality presses against every man's chest. That night, Mueller writes another letter home. This time he does not hide the truth. He describes the meals, the order, the calm, the decency. He does not boast, he explains. They are not cruel, they are prepared. Outside, the distant rumble of a train echoes through the night. Mueller does not look up. He already knows its path and its purpose. He already understands what it means. He has witnessed the machine in motion, and its scale, precision, and inevitability are now undeniable.
May 8th, 1945. Morning at Camp Hearn. The day begins not with fanfare, not with the wailing of sirens or the trumpeting of victory, but with a stillness that feels almost ceremonial in its simplicity. A warm breeze moves gently across the camp, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and wood. The men gather in the yard as the announcement is read aloud, calm and unadorned from a small stand. Hostilities in Europe have ceased. For a heartbeat, no one moves. The words linger in the air like smoke, intangible and yet undeniable. Then the weight begins to settle. Some exhale deeply, shoulders sagging as if they had been carrying invisible burdens for years. Others simply remain where they are, standing rigidly at first before the exhaustion pulls them down to the ground. A few men stare at the dirt beneath their boots, faces drained of emotion, neither grief nor joy present, just a hollow quiet, the fatigue of countless marches, battles, and nights without sleep. Karl Müller stands apart, feeling none of the immediate relief or jubilation others might have expected. Instead, he experiences a clarity he had never known before. The war he had devoted himself to, the battles he had survived and surrendered from, the strategic calculations and endless skirmishes, all of it had ended months ago, somewhere in the spaces between ordinary meals and the comfort of small kindnesses. That which ended today was purely administrative, paperwork, records, and declarations. The human struggle, the memory of fear, the imprint of hunger and exhaustion, all of that remained etched in every prisoner's mind. Life in the camp moves on quietly. Lists for repatriation are drawn up, medical examinations are performed with careful attention, forms are signed and countersigned. Every process is orderly, deliberate, and methodical. Müller is assigned to inventory the camp stores before he departs. He moves between rows of supplies, noting the staggering amounts: barrels of food, crates of medical equipment, stacks of blankets, boots, uniforms. Nothing has been wasted. Nothing is missing. Everything is accounted for and prepared for the next arrivals, the next crisis, the next contingency. There is no sign of rationing, no desperation lurking in the stockrooms, no corners cut. The scale is overwhelming, not in excess, but in the assurance that this machine, this camp, could continue indefinitely. Weeks pass. Colonel Franz Wietz prepares to leave the camp, having fulfilled his duties as senior officer. Before departing, he shakes the hand of Captain Robert Henderson, a gesture that carries weight beyond words. "You followed the rules," Wietz says, his tone reflective, almost admiring. Henderson replies simply, "We followed ourselves." It is an understated acknowledgement of professionalism and principle, the quiet insistence that power can be exercised with discipline and humanity. Wietz will later write in his memoirs that this period of captivity taught him more about the reasons behind Germany's defeat than any single battlefield encounter. The realization begins here, in the order and calm of a prison camp far from the front lines, in the steady rhythm of supply and adherence to rules that never bend under pressure. Karl Müller's final night in Camp Herne approaches. The mess hall prepares one last dinner, familiar now in its routine: a stew, thick and hearty, bread that is soft and warm, and coffee, black and strong. The atmosphere is quiet, reflective, almost sacred in its ordinariness. The men move through the line, eating with a practiced calm, the shock of novelty long gone, replaced by an understanding that this is how things are, how they have always been, and how they will always be remembered. Private James O'Connor finds Müller afterward, a cigarette dangling between his fingers, his expression open and casual. "Good luck. Where are you headed?" "Home. What is left of it." O'Connor hesitates briefly, then reaches into his pocket and produces a small folded piece of paper. He hands it to Müller. "If you ever come back, as a guest." Müller nods, unable to find the words, the gesture more profound than any farewell speech could be. The small envelope is not just an address, it is a token of humanity, of the unexpected dignity extended to a former enemy. The next morning, Müller boards the train heading east. Through the window, he watches Camp Herne fade into the distance. The orderly rows of barracks shrink, the fence and guard towers disappear behind the curvature of the tracks, and for the first time, he sees the camp in its entirety, not as a cage, but as a demonstration. Every detail, from the meticulously stocked mess hall to the calm diligence of the guards, is a lesson writ large, and the lesson is unmistakable. Power need not shout to be formidable. The war, Müller realizes, had taken many things from him: comrades, innocence, certainty, and the fragile illusion of control over his own fate. But it had also given him one enduring truth, as stark and undeniable as the morning sun over Texas fields, that the most devastating weapon in war is not always fire or steel, not terror or starvation. It is abundance, exercised deliberately and reliably, with confidence and discipline. The train rolls past fertile farmland, past towns untouched by destruction, past communities that continue their lives as though war is a distant story. The contrast is vivid, almost unbearable, Müller understands that Germany did not lose because of lack of valor, intelligence, or initiative. It lost because it faced an adversary capable of sustaining life at scale, capable of maintaining civilization even amid global conflict, capable of exercising decency as strategy. By the time the train rounds a bend and the horizon stretches open before him, his hands rest steady in his lap. He does not clutch, he does not fidget. The clarity he feels is profound and absolute. He has been broken in ways the camp never intended, and yet paradoxically also strengthened. He carries the memory of discipline, order, abundance, and deliberate humanity, lessons that precede tactics, battles, and guns. And for the first time in years, he smiles, not from joy, not from relief, but from understanding. He knows the truth of war, the scale of the enemy, and the lesson Camp Hearn imparted, that a nation prepared, organized, and able to sustain itself can defeat even the bravest of foes simply by being ready when others cannot. The train hums steadily, wheels clattering against steel rails, rocking gently in rhythm with the landscape passing outside. Morning light spills across the fields, illuminating towns and farms untouched by war. The contrast is stark. Here, life continues. Children run along dirt roads, smoke curls from chimneys, livestock grazes quietly in pastures. It is a world untouched by the chaos, a world that has endured not through sheer luck, but through preparation, structure, and the ability to feed, clothe, and sustain its people. Müller sits near the window, watching, absorbing, understanding. The realization that has been forming for months now crystallizes fully. Germany had fought bravely, with intelligence and strategy, yet it could not compete with a nation that could feed prisoners better than we could feed our own children. At the time, it had been a startling statement. Now, traveling east through rolling countryside, it is a truth that resonates with the weight of inevitability. Strategy, courage, and initiative mattered, but so did supply chains, preparation, and the ability to maintain abundance in every situation. The American machine had done more than win battles. It had outlasted, outsustained, and outprepared, and that, Müller understands fully, is why Germany lost. The train passes a cluster of small farms, the land fertile, neat rows of crops stretching towards the horizon. He thinks of the crates that he had helped inventory: flour, powdered milk, canned meats, clothing. Weeks of preparation, carefully planned, always ready, never lacking. These crates, he realizes, were symbols of an invisible weapon, a war fought not with bullets, but with logistics, stability, and decency. Each crate a message: we are ready, we can endure, we can outlast. Müller closes his eyes, letting the rhythm of the train mirror the rhythm of his thoughts. Memories of Camp Hearn flood back: the mess halls, the laughter, the orderly rows of bunks, the calm authority of Captain Henderson, the quiet observation of Colonel Wietz. Each memory reinforces a lesson that transcends fear, hunger, or despair. Power, when exercised with preparation and consistency, is absolute. Hunger could not topple this machine, fear could not destabilize it, and even defeat in Europe could not undo the confidence instilled through structure and abundance. As the train approaches stations, he observes the people, soldiers, civilians, railway workers, each performing their roles efficiently. The sense of organization is pervasive. Not chaos, not improvisation, but deliberate, controlled, reliable execution. And Müller understands that while Germany had valor and strategy, it had lacked the infrastructure to turn those qualities into success. The war had been decided not just by the courage of soldiers on the front, but by the endurance of a nation behind them, a nation